This week in games, Tik Tok lays off Marvel Snap Studio. Is there a solution to the studio layoff problem? PlayStation gets sued for nearly $8 billion. And the Game Awards answers our most dire questions. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 175. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hello. Only $0.25 left until our 200th episode.
I know, man. I know. Look at all the things we've done. Nearly 200 of these. 50 something piggy banks. Nearly 100 reviews. We're kicking ass out here, man. We're doing our damn thing.
I remember the first episode we did had something involving Halo, and that stuck in my mind for some reason. And now
it was the Xbox showcase.
Yes, it was.
Where
it was the first Halo
gameplay was shown.
Man, what high hopes we had for that game back then.
High hopes. Hey, they reached my hopes. I like that game. I still like that game. I'm fighting the temptation to play that game every day because apparently the new season is really good.
You see, I'm more thinking in terms of what they showed us then, which was the campaign, which their style of how they did that just didn't pan out the way they were hoping it to. You know, the open world. You like the open world?
I liked it.
State of Halo Infinite? Yeah, I just didn't think it worked with the gameplay of Halo. But the multiplayer certainly.
It felt more like a hub. Instead of like breaking it up level to level, it just felt like a hub. So it was just like, oh, I'm just going to the next mission. It's not a world that you live in. It's just a world that you dip into the next bit. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Kind of made for filler in my eyes. Just having to go from long bits to long bits just for the bits that I want to play, which is the traditional Halo story. But you're still right about Halo multiplayer. That's still very good.
I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
Connor? What's it going to take for you, my friend, to just fucking get the PlayStation version of Baldur's Gate 3? You know what I'm saying? Because we're waiting forever for this crossplay. It's just never fucking coming.
Well, Tavin, I have to spend so much of my time actually playing the game itself first before I can go into multiplayer.
You've played it enough.
I had not played it enough. I hadn't beat it. But even if that is the case, it was built.
Who cares about beating a video game?
It was built and well, a lot of people. But
if it's over 100 hours long, fuck that. Play 20. Play 20 to 30. You're good.
Okay, yeah. So no, I only have to play 20 hours of Persona 4 Golden then. Got it. I'll do that.
I mean, by that point, you can determine if you like the game or not.
Well, we're not talking about whether we can like the game or not, but would you think it's understandable for anyone to just drop the game after 20 hours of Persona 4 Golden? Wouldn't you urge them that you're missing out on the whole experience?
I mean, if you are dropping out of a Persona game 20 hours in, then it just didn't click with you. It's just not your thing. And that's fine.
Sure. But wouldn't you look at them as just like, if you did like it and you said, I just played 20 hours and I was good, how would you feel about that kind of person? I get it. Autonomy.
I would ask why. Yeah. Why is that the case? But I wouldn't be like, oh, you didn't play Persona. No, you played 20 hours. You didn't like it. It's fine.
Well,
that opinion is just as valid as my opinion because they've still put in the time. They've seen the mechanics. They know what a Persona game is. By that point, they're well into their second dungeon.
How about you stop fucking bringing reason into this and just bring hate, okay? Just bring hate. Do that every now and then. I don't have a lot of hate
in my heart, Connor. I don't have a lot of hate in my heart, except for when we call Final Fantasy 16 an RPG. That's not true. That's not a thing. A lot of hate for that. But ladies and gentlemen, that's neither here nor there because this is the Two Penny Gamescast. Each week, me and Connor come to you with two topics, two pennies, if you will, considering the video game industry, and we bring you our 2 cents on them.
Change it up.
I just fucked it up.
First time you've done that.
What 2 topics, 2 pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. We are also tacking on to the end of this episode our Tomb Raider review for our 2 Penny Game Club. We're releasing that early because next week is our Game Awards prediction episode. That one's going to run long. It's going to be fun. We're going to crack open some beers and have a good-ass time. You know what I'm saying, Connor? But
I'm looking forward to it.
Now is now, later is later. Now, we are going to talk to you all about how more layoffs have hit the video game industry. TikTok is a pain in my ass. Also, Game Awards news is hitting. Sony has a $7.8 billion lawsuit and maybe a potential solution for some video game layoff problems in the future. But we're going to get into that here in a minute. I want to remind you that this show comes to you every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Remember, you can also get Piggy Bank, live episodes of the Piggy Bank every Saturday at 8 p.m. And then new episodes of Hype. I got to talk to Phil about when those are going up now. We keep putting them up on Tuesdays, and I think we're overcrowding the Tuesday market here. We need to figure out something else. But, Connor, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Our first topic of the day, whose first penny is this? My first penny?
This is
my
you.
first penny. Ha Hilarious. Tavin, you're running the show so well today. Marvel Snap will still flourish in the future despite ByteDance's exit from gaming. This is from Polygon by Nicole Carpenter. TikTok owner ByteDance is looking to get out of mainstream gaming, including at its subsidiary Nuverse, the publisher of Marvel Snap. ByteDance confirmed Monday in a statement to Polygon that it will, quote, restructure its gaming business. The decision is expected to lead to hundreds of layoffs, according to Reuters, which first reported the news. ByteDance has not confirmed the scope of its layoffs. Quote, we regularly review our business and make adjustment to center on long-term strategic growth areas, a ByteDance representative said in a statement. Quote, following a recent review, we've made the difficult decision to restructure our gaming business. Though ByteDance is divesting from Nuverse, Marvel Snap, quote, will continue to operate and flourish in the future, according to a quote piece posted earlier Monday on X, formerly Twitter, by the official Marvel Snap X account. The game is developed by Irvine, California-based indie studio Second Dinner. And then a quote from Marvel Snap. Dear Snappers, some of our players have expressed the concerns regarding the reported structural changes at Nuverse. We wish to thank you for your concern and assure you that regardless of any changes at Nuverse, Snap will continue to operate and flourish in the future. Reuters, citing 4 unnamed sources, reports that ByteDance has no plans to enter the mainstream gaming market again. The company's casual gaming publisher, Ohio, which works with Chinese social media platform Douyin, will not be impacted, nor will the casual games that run on TikTok beyond Nuverse. ByteDance is reportedly looking to sell off mobile gaming subsidiary Moonton Technology, Reuters reported. Earlier this month, ByteDance restructured its virtual reality company Pico, resulting in hundreds of employees being laid off, TechCrunch reported. Nuverse has had 3,000 employees in 2021, a number that has remained relatively consistent over the years, the outlet said.
It's, I'm gonna be the first one to say it. This is a bit different from a lot of the other layoffs we've experienced, where it's game companies make decisions that ended up backfiring and they put the onus on the workers themselves. This one, it's different in the sense that they're trying to get out of the gaming space completely. I don't think that justifies laying off a bunch of people after creating something like Marvel Snap and then just being like, okay, we decided we don't want to do this anymore. But as far as a company goes, they kind of just have the ability to decide if they don't want to make a product anymore, which at the end of the day, disregarding the art form that is video games, even something like a mobile game, which I would consider art. I mean, they had to make even the art for this particular snaps that you share in that game. I played it once.
They're cards.
Yeah, cards. Yes, they are cards.
Play it
Digital
more.
cards.
It's so good. It's on your beloved PC too.
Yeah, fair enough. But all that being said, I can't really fault them too much if they decide, okay, we just don't want to make games anymore, and so we're just going to close it down. It's not like it's continuing in some form or fashion and they messed up somewhere and the workers are experiencing that. It's just a higher up business decision that unfortunately is going to lead to layoffs. Though, I understand people being upset at this, especially with how they handle the layoffs, since it hasn't really come in full force yet. I think that's really when we're going to be seeing a lot of the criticisms of how they handle it. And for now, it's just kind of too early in the phases for me to admonish them too much.
You know what, Connor? I don't 100% disagree with you. I'm kind of in there with you. It's their business, their company. They can choose to do with it what they will. Business is business, and unfortunately, this is the uglier side of it is that sometimes, people at the top make decisions and decide to back out at some point, whether, their gaming division wasn't making them enough money, whether um, it was a failure, which I think clearly it wasn't, at least Marvel Snap, in terms of Marvel Snap, because that was a huge success last year. It was in my personal top 10 of the year. It was a Game Award winner. Millions of players played it, and it's still fairly popular to this day. So I would definitely count Marvel Snap as a success. Why this would dissuade them from continuing down that path, making other Snap games with other universes, like a Star Wars Snap, or who even knows what, a bajillion things that you could turn into a Snap game that would be dope. You know what I'd kill for, Connor, is a PlayStation first party Snap game. Let me get Kratos fighting Joel, fighting Nathan, fighting Aloy, all that fun stuff. That sounds like a good time. But that's beside the point. The unfortunate side of this is that people are losing their jobs. We don't know how many. It's probably going to be a lot, which, sucks. And a lot of it is due to, I would say, corporate greed. Somebody up top is just not making enough money for their own personal liking, which sucks. But again, this is their company. They can choose to go down this route. I don't personally agree with it. I think Marvel Snap was a huge success, and they should, continue to grow that avenue out. But for whatever reason behind the curtain, they're deeming that it's not worth going down that road. And who knows? Maybe in the multiverse of madness of all of this, if they had continued to go down that route, more people would have lost their jobs than the people who are losing them today. I can't tell you that's a huge what if scenario, but at least this isn't this is not seemingly like someone made really bad choices or people don't seem to be getting fully screwed here. It's just, the unfortunate part of life where, hey, sometimes you lose your job.
And like we said, we don't know the full scope of them. They could transfer people over to work on some of the other things they do, because it's the owners of TikTok. People of TikTok. So, people who make something like a mobile game should have experience in. I don't really know on the technical aspect of what those skills would allow to be transferred over to things that TikTok does.
Keeping a player's attention, or a user's attention, what makes for a good UI base, all of those just different usability with a mobile app and all that could be very useful. I don't know if TikTok needs more people on that side, and also these people are owned and operate from different parts of the world, so. It's less likely that they'll be able to find a job in TikTok themselves. But, you never know. You could be right. Someone could transfer over to some other department or something, and we could figure it out that way. But I think, I think the main focus of this is that, hey, people are losing their jobs. It sucks. It's unfortunate. Hopefully they'll be able to find their feet. And, Connor, transitioning over to the second topic of the day, your first penny. Maybe there is, in fact, hope for them yet. Connor, take it away with the next story.
I believe there is, aside from unionization. This is an article from Axios. In a brutal year for game developers, how one studio made it through. Particularly, this is from Stephen Totillo. In a year of bad news for many video game studios, Chelsea Blasco has a more upbeat story to share about how her team made it through. Ion Galaxy Studios, where Blasco is a co-CEO, has actually grown in 2023. That's despite taking the kind of hard hit near the start of the year that knocked down so many other studios. The company, which began in Chicago 15 years ago, operates primarily as a work-for-hire studio that has co-developed or supported projects from Activision, Bethesda, Xbox, PlayStation, and more. After weathering a major game cancellation, it will end the year with a headcount up by more than 30 people. It's definitely been an odd year, Blasco tells Axios. In January, Iron Galaxy and publisher Epic Games announced that they were shutting down Rumbleverse, a live service wrestling battle royale that Blasco's team had spent a few years developing. The game had launched with expansive plans for continued operation just the prior August. Quote, "We had millions of people playing it. We just didn't have people spending money on it," Blasco remembers. Epic told Iron Galaxy of the looming closure in late 2022, sending the studio scrambling to find work for about 65 developers, a third of the company who'd been on the game. Obviously, the holidays are not the ideal time to be trying to get a bunch of deals, Blasco says. The studio turned to development partners it had been too busy to accept offers from, reconnected with prior partners like Sony's Naughty Dog studio, and recommitted to work for higher gigs after Rumbleverse's failure. The outreach worked and resulted in 0 layoffs, Blasco says. Quote, "We've gotten most of the people placed on projects." Despite an unusually loaded calendar of excellent new video games, 2023 has been brutal for the video game industry. Around 8,000 game industry workers have lost their jobs, including 900 from Epic studio closures have been frequent. Including 900 from Epic. Studio closures have been frequent. Blasco says Rumbleverse's cancellation could have been devastating to the studio a decade ago, but she highlights a few factors that made a difference. Diversification of risk. By taking on multiple projects at once, helped soften the blow. Ion Galaxy's in-house rule, bent during the peak of Rumbleverse's development, is to not put more than a third of the studio on any project. Maintaining relationships with business partners led to new or expanded work in a pinch. One example, Ion Galaxy was able to take on a more expansive role this year in the 10th anniversary update to Killer Instinct, a fighting game it worked on for Microsoft a decade ago. Keeping costs down. Quote, "We're not going to be the highest salary you can ever make in games," Blasco says. "We are going to pay you a competitive salary. We hope that our benefits and our culture, our values also play into that for people." Keeping teams together. Quote, "We don't have that turnover where we have to hire people again and retain them over and over again. That also kind of leads to more stability. The teams know each other," end quote. What's next? Ion Galaxy is building a physical studio in Nashville, Tennessee, but is delaying opening a location in Austin, Texas until after 2024. Quote, "We've been able to pick up some of the people who have been let go, which we feel good about," Blasco says, acknowledging the broader cuts in the industry. "We were able to recover and continue into the next year, and the next year will definitely be stronger." So very different from the consistent cancellations and layoffs that we've had from all of these other different studios, as highlighted in the article. There are some lessons to take away from this. First of all, though, this operates differently than a lot of the other studios that have laid people off. You know, they hire people leave, people come, some people stay, most people probably go. That's typically how these kinds of studios work out. Whereas things like Sony, those people stay on. They make game after year after year. BioWare, Bungie, all these companies that have had layoffs in the past, they do it differently than these people did. Despite that, though, some of these things can be done, such as diversification of risk. I mean, making it to where you don't put more than 1/3 of a studio on any project, I think really does help you not put all your eggs in one basket, which we have seen many time and time again. Like Bungie, for example, with Destiny 2. They just did that live service game model that worked for many years, but when it didn't, we saw the layoffs come, and in particularly scummy ways as well. And also another one that's more easy for this company to do, since they don't work with just one studio. They're not just a Sony subsidiary or a Microsoft one, is maintaining those relationships and being able to go to other projects rather than, once again, having them all in one basket. Not only just for one that's under your own brand, but ones that are under other brands. And I think this actually kind of tells a lot to the a lot of the deals we've seen going through. Most recently, the obvious big one is Activision Blizzard being acquired by Microsoft. One of the pitfalls of doing that is if there's going to be layoffs, it's going to be a lot harder to avoid that because they don't have, it's ultimately the big name's decision of whether cuts are going to be made, whether it be Sony or whatnot. And so being able to just rent yourself out to these other studios and not exactly be owned by them, it kind of helps soften these kinds of blows when they inevitably do happen.
Well, there's a push and pull to all of this. First of all, I don't think this is a bulletproof solution. I think overall, it sounds like Iron Galaxy got pretty lucky in this. They just happened to have the studio culture, have the studio setup to weather the current storm that they're in. Rumbleverse, as the article said, closed earlier this year. We covered it when it closed, and we speculated, hey man, does every game need to be a games of service game? And now we look to Remedy Studios, who's making a Alan Wake / Control Universe multiplayer game of some sort, and they're switching from free to play to hey, you have to buy the game to get in model. Maybe that would have worked better for Rumbleverse, as Blasco said. Blasco? Yeah, Blasco said, that's such a video game character name. That's awesome. That's an awesome name.
I keep thinking Blaskowitz.
Yeah,
You had the wits there in your video game.
Yeah, right there, right? But even like Blasco sounds like something you'd hear out of like Ratchet and Clank or something, which is, it's an awesome name. But even Blasco says here, we had millions of people playing Rumbleverse, which from the outside, Rumbleverse seemed like it was successful because it had a player base and people were playing it every day. But not everybody was spending money on it. And that's the hard part. And that's the tricky part with free-to-play games is that, sure, you have more players, but you don't necessarily have as much people spending money, so that revenue isn't coming in. Now, them being in the position to where, hey, they split their workforce up. They have people doing work for different studios and different projects at a time, never having more than a third of the company on one project at a time, does sound smart for a company or from a developer of this caliber, being not a small developer at all by any means, but not the biggest of the big either. One that, does work for other studios, fills it in, and makes games on the side as well. This works for them. That's great. It keeps the cash flow rolling. It keeps them having a little more job security. They admitted themselves, hey, we don't have the most competitive or we don't have the best salaries in the industry, but we are competitive in that. So you will make a living working here. Which is great, and they've been able to pick up some people who have lost their jobs during all of these layoffs that have been happening, which is also great for them. However, I don't think that this type of setup works for everybody. The reason this works for him is for them rather, is because there are dogs bigger than them. There are guys who are bigger than them with bigger studios, with bigger budgets, bigger scopes than what Iron Galaxy can currently do. And there are smaller dogs that they can come in and help push out a smaller indie game than what Rumbleverse was. All of that is great because all of that, again, keeps the money flowing, keeps it going, so forth. But a Naughty Dog, for example, when they work on an IP as big as The Last of Us, they have to dedicate a huge percentage of their workforce to that project to get it working, to get it going with the level of fidelity that is expected from the gamer. Now, is that our fault for expecting this much from these dev studios? Maybe, but these are the bars that are being set for us to consume. So it's tricky when a Last of Us project falls through and they got to push it back or put it on ice so that they can find the fun in it or get started on a new development project for the majority of their team to work on so that they can keep the studio open type of work. You're going to lose some guys on the offset. And guess what? Naughty Dog lost some QA guys. That happens when your multiplayer game doesn't get as far as it was going to get, and that's unfortunate, and that's the industry that we live in, and I wish there was a better way around it. I still think unionization is our best option here. However, it is on the basis of these bigger publishers who own all these studios to diversify their workforce and get it rolling. When a Redfall flops, a Hi-Fi Rush softens the blow. You know what I'm saying? A game that came out and was unexpected, but still a bit of a success, increased Game Pass numbers, got a nice chunk of change off of their sales. It was a smaller game that didn't take as much funding. That was great. That was cool. That gave us a chunk of change. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and guess Arcane is not going to suffer layoffs because of that reason. Maybe not because of Hi-Fi Rush specifically, but maybe the money that Call of Duty brings in will soften that blow. Maybe the money Diablo 4 brings in will soften that blow. Overwatch, World of Warcraft, etc. And then there's smaller successes that they've had along the way will help keep all that thing. That's the ideal world that we live in, where the big guys are able to keep job security for these bigger devs by having a bunch of bigger devs, and the money can flow around from each of them in that way. Ideally, that's how this would work. Obviously, we don't live in that ideal space, and we have examples of like Bungie, where Bungie is recently acquired, so decisions made on their end were more Bungie independent as opposed to PlayStation choices, and it sounds like it was Bungie heads that screwed those people over greed. So again, I want to say this is great. This is cool. Definitely an interesting case study for everybody to look at and go, oh, wait, this worked for y'all? Okay, well, how can we apply this to other studios? Maybe we take a step back. Maybe we don't give the most stellar 10 out of 10 experiences all the time. Maybe we put out a couple of 7s or 8s, that are smaller titles that we can recycle out a little faster. You look to Insomniac games. Insomniac has currently been the most prolific first-party studio in the PlayStation Studios umbrella. They've put out 3 games plus a remaster on the PlayStation 5, all of which have been fairly critically acclaimed. Obviously, none of them necessarily Game of the Year cut material, except for me personally thinking Spider-Man 2. But Miles Morales, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Spider-Man Remastered are all great projects that are worth your money and worth your time, and you should play them if you haven't played them. Maybe if instead of doing big Last of Us Part 2 numbers or God of War Ragnarok numbers, maybe we cut it back and we do more Spider-Man Miles Morales, we do more Uncharted Lost Legacies. We're not going to be able to cover it on today's show, but there's a bunch of rumors flying around about a Venom game happening because Tony Todd is out here saying only 10% of his voice lines got used in Spider-Man 2. So maybe there's more, another smaller project coming around the bend for Insomniac. What does that do? And again, that speaks to the diversify your workforce. Not everybody at Insomniac is working on Spider-Man 2. Somebody's working on Wolverine. Somebody's working on the smaller game that's coming out or any other DLC project that's coming for Spider-Man. I'm sure there's something going on with Ratchet, at least, in discussion about it, because I struggle to imagine that they're just letting their bread and butter fade, especially one that's lasted this long and saw such success off the last game. I'm sure discussions about Ratchet are happening. Can that be the case at a Naughty Dog? Does everything need to be The Last of Us? Does everything need to be Uncharted? So in Sony Santa Monica Studios, we know Cory Barlog's working on something. They've got 2 games cooking at the same time. Obviously, at different steps in the process. God of War Ragnarok was a bit more iterative from God of War 2018. But what else are they cooking up over there? What is Sucker Punch doing? We assume it's a Ghost of Tsushima 2, but is that all they have? Is Horizon all? What's that studio's name?
Gorilla.
Is Horizon all Gorilla has? What if we decrease these scopes? Everything's getting bigger. Everything is jumping in size. Last of Us 1 to Last of Us 2 is twice the size. Does it need to be that? God of War Ragnarok to God of War 2018, a little more same realm, but Ragnarok's still bigger, still more going on in that game. Do we need all of these big-ass games? Do we need to get bigger and bigger and bigger? Hey, guess what? We as gamers don't have that much time on our hands, I can't find the time for Baldur's Gate 3. I can't find it. It doesn't exist. I don't have it. I want to, but I don't. You know what would help? Is if every other game wasn't 30 hours long. Spider-Man 2 is the same length as Spider-Man 1. And that was awesome. That was great. I loved it. It was fantastic. It was better in every way, but it wasn't bigger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and that's a solution for those bigger companies. It certainly is. But you mentioned it before. I mentioned it in the past. You mentioned it in the past. Unionization is core at making this, not negatively affect the employees, at least as much. More bargaining power is always right. Though I also do think this really serves as a signal of, okay, maybe next time we hear of the next big acquisition starting to go through, we should oppose it, just on general principle, to prevent this kind of stuff from happening more in the future. But I'm happy.
I don't think acquisitions are the problem here. Like, certainly they could be contributing to that fact, but to me, it's why are we chasing these trends? Why is everything a games of service game? Why can't something just be a little more traditional, a little more sure that it's gonna get money? Hey, PlayStation is putting out double-digit number games of service games in the next 2-3 years. Why? When the last 2 generations have been stacking up money for you because you guarantee high-quality single-player games. High-quality single-player games. And guess what? The one time that fell through, Last of Us multiplayer, hey, people lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
The
solution, the problem, Tavin, and this is one that we all need to admit to ourselves, is Fortnite. If it wasn't for Fortnite, this never would have happened. We would have had just main lanes, single player games would have been more of the norm, and not this live service bullshit. And people would have saved their jobs. Let's blame Epic.
And what's funny is Fortnite isn't learning the lesson. They just had layoffs too, but now they had layoffs and then immediately had their biggest season since launch. So they're not learning a lesson either. So we're just sitting here, we're going, okay, all of this is great, but we need to figure out better ways to add more security to this job and let it continue to be a growing market. I think video games as an industry shrunk this year. Well, I don't think it. I know it because I pay attention to the news every week. Video games as an industry shrunk this year, and it's the first time it's happened in a while. And I think we need to sit back, take some lessons, take it on the chin, and find a better and brighter way forward. And maybe something that Iron Galaxy has here, maybe a part of this is the solution here, but I don't think it's the full picture. Speaking of full pictures, Connor, the Game Awards are happening. They are coming up real soon on us. And Jeff Keighley who's very open to the public and open to taking criticism and having a conversation with the public, did a live stream. I believe, was it on Q&A live stream on Twitch? Keighley did. And there's a lot of great headlines that got pulled from this live stream. We're going to kind of talk about it all and have it all in this one big chunk. This is my second penny of the day. First off, we're going to talk about security. And all of these articles are from Chris Scullion over at VGC. The Game Awards security will be tightened to prevent another stage invasion, Jeff Keighley says. Both the Game Awards 2022 and this year's Gamescom opening night live show were disrupted by unauthorized people coming onto stage and speaking into the microphone. The incidents have raised concerns for safety of Keighley and other guests who take the stage to give and receive awards and discuss upcoming games. In a recent Q&A stream on Twitch, Keighley was asked if he would be taking more security measures for this year's Game Awards to prevent a third stage invasion incident. Keighley said he was, but didn't want to go into specifics, so that would-be invaders wouldn't know the security plans in advance. Quote, "Yes, we are," he replied. Quote, "We don't want to talk about that stuff too publicly just because it's security. We definitely have plans, and we're trying to do all we can to keep me safe, but also everyone watching the show, the audience, people participating in the show, and everything. It's certainly something that we're thinking about. We appreciate the concern. Believe me, that's something that is top of mind for us, but we also want to put on a great show that celebrates these games and celebrates our love of video games. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. But yeah, I appreciate the concern around that. Hey, motherfuckers, you sons of bitches running up on stage. I'm talking to you, Bill Clinton kid. I'm talking to you, whoever the fuck is in this fucking picture. Y'all are ruining this for the rest of us. Stop being dumb fucks. Stop being dangerous motherfuckers. And let us fucking enjoy our goddamn celebrations about fucking video games. You fucking internet clout chasers need to suck a dick and die.
No, Tavin, you don't understand something, that is not only the best moment from that year of the Game of the Year awards, but it also is funny as hell. Okay, now, to set the groundwork. Tavin, it is wrong. You're wrong. You're being a stick up the ass, Tavin. You're being a stick up the ass. You're being a stick up the ass.
These are things that happen that make the event less fun for the rest of us.
It's not going to be as great. As a matter of fact, it's not.
Connor, when it becomes a private event, and normal Joe Schmoes like you and I can't buy tickets anymore because motherfuckers keep running up on stage, yeah, that's going to make it less fun.
It's already exclusive in that regard.
It's not exclusive. You can buy a ticket for the Game Awards.
This is all to say, obviously increasing your security is a good idea, even if that incident was hilarious, and it was. Let's be honest with one another.
It was cute,
preventing
it was
in the
funny,
future
but it was also
is not
annoying.
To do anymore. No, it was not. What was annoying is...
Connor, one of your favorite game... Stop. I'm going to stop you right now. One of your favorite game developers in the world, Miyazaki, was on that stage. If that Bill Clinton kid had something more nefarious in his mind than just, talking some shit on a microphone, that would have affected you. Wouldn't have been so funny then.
No, Tavin, you see, that's why I said that beefing security is a good idea and preventing it from happening in the future is a good idea. I'm just squashing the notion that that wasn't funny and memorable, which it definitely was. No harm, no foul.
It wasn't memorable the second time it happened.
See, yeah, exactly, because the second guy's lame as hell. Bill Clinton wants to play GTA 6. Boring, unoriginal. It's obviously a repeat of what happened last time. It sucks. I'm only talking about the first instance on the grounds of it being objectively funny and memorable.
It's not that funny.
Of course, it's very funny. It was hilarious. Because you remember our confusion. It worked. It got us, Tavin.
It's funny. It's funny. Well, it wasn't funny for us in the moment. We didn't laugh. We laughed about it on Twitter later. We didn't laugh in the moment. In the moment, we went, what the fuck was that? That was weird. All right, moving on.
Mark of good comedy. That was the point. It was supposed to make us go.
That is not a mark of good comedy. That
is, yes. And we were the joke, Tavin.
Second, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
And of course, it's not worth it in the grand scheme of what security is and preventing, like you said, worse instances from happening. I'm just defending the funniness of it and the novelty of the first time it happened. Of course,
Also,
afterwards,
it's a pain
you
in the
want to
ass for
squash
those
it.
in production to like
Sure.
all of these moments are measured out and beat by beat, like they're prepared, and that's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to put on a Jeff Keighley show. A lot of work.
Okay, in that case, go after the Kratos voice actor as much as you're going after him right now.
But
Because you know that guy.
he was invited to the stage. He was invited to the stage. Did he go long? Yes.
Of course.
Should
we? Yes.
Should we start playing people off? Yes, we should. But he was invited to the stage. We were open and willing to listen to him talk.
Sure, which is why on the first instances of it happening, it's a fine thing. Of course, like you said, preventing it from happening in the first place.
Unless
but it was humorous
unless that kid had a weapon on him.
Of course, it would have been not funny, but that's not what happened. And why we're stopping it from happening in the first place, because if anything, that served to show that security needed to be beefed up. So if anything, it was a good preventative measure if the worst it's going to do is tell a joke that some people might not find funny. I mean,
it being funny is not it being funny is not an excuse for it to happen and be like, oh yeah, I'd like to see more of that. No, absolutely not.
See more of it? No. To happen once, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Keighley also weighed in on Dave the Diver debate. This is a debate happening with the best independent category. We kind of talked about it when we last week when we went over the nominations. This is VGC. The game's nomination has sparked debate over what makes an indie game, because despite having the conventional lo-fi appearance that some indie games have, its developer Mint Rocket is a small team within Nexon, a South Korean company. Excuse me. That made $1.8 billion in revenue in 2021 alone. During that same Q&A, it was brought up to Keighley, and Keighley answered that the definition of an indie game is hard to define, and that ultimately it's up to the Game Awards jury to pick the nominees. Quote, look, it's a great question. Independent can mean different things to different people, and it's sort of a broad term. You can argue, does independent mean the budget of the game? Does it independent mean where the source of the financing was? Does it mean the team size? Is it the kind of independent spirit of the game, meaning a smaller game that's sort of different? I think everyone has their own opinion about this, and we really defer to our jury of 120 global media outlets who vote on these awards to make that determination of is something independent or not. In other industries, sometimes there are things. I think in the film industry, the budget can't be above this amount of dollars or it's not independent. So I don't know. Some people have said Larian with Baldur's Gate 3, that's an independent game. Kojima Productions with Death Stranding, some people say that's an independent game. And even though that's an independent studio, of course, it's funded by PlayStation. Keighley also pointed out some of the other indie games nominated in this year's Game Awards have publishers asking, quote, if you have a publisher, is that still independent or not? Addressing Dave the Diver specifically, he said, quote, that game is made by a group named Mint Rocket. It's a smaller game from a smaller group, but it's part of Nexon. They're employees of Nexon, which is a very large publisher. So I think it's a fair debate and discussion. Is that game truly independent or is it not? And you can kind of argue it either way. It's independent in spirit and it's a small game. I don't know what the budget is, but it's probably a relatively small budget game, but it is from a larger entity. Whereas there are other games on that list that are from much smaller studios. But even something like Dredge, which is published by Team 17, so is that independent or not because you have a publisher? It's a really complicated thing to figure out and come up with strict rules around it. So we let people use their best judgment, and you can agree or disagree with the choices. But the fact that Dave the Diver was on that list meant that out of all the independent games that the jury looked at, or what they thought were independent games, that was on the top 5 that they looked at this year.
Well, those people also put Starfield in Best RPG, so what does their opinion really matter?
No, Connor, Starfield was going to get nominated for Best RPG. That one was a given.
If you're an idiot,
why was Final Fantasy 16 nominated for Best RPG? That's a question that we need to explore. But, I mean, I think Keighley has the best stance on this topic, is that, listen, man, it's not my choice. We keep it open for 120 other... for our jury of 120 different outlets to make these choices for us, and clearly they didn't think Dave the Diver was Dave the Diver's situation did not discredit them from being one of the best quote unquote indie games of the year. Now, what is an indie game? That's a tough question. It's really hard these days to determine what that is. Could it just be the budget of the game? Could it be the size of the team? In that case, should Hi-Fi Rush be in that conversation? Should Baldur's Gate 3 be in that conversation? Should just a small, if Naughty Dog were to do what we talked about earlier on this podcast, go out and make a small game with a low budget of 20 people, but it's still a Naughty Dog game, can that be nominated for Best Indie Game of the Year? I think we need a different terminology for it, probably. Maybe Best Indie or Best Independent Game isn't the best terminology for this type of award. But, I mean, what are you going to replace it with? Best Small Game of the Year? That's a little demeaning to indie games who are giving their all into these smaller projects. And, you know, sometimes these smaller projects are worth way more than these bigger projects. Power Wash Simulator is what I would consider an independent game, but I don't know the studio well enough. But Power Wash Simulator is a smaller game made by a smaller team. You can see the budget in that game. It's my second favorite game of last year. And in some ways, it was my favorite game of last year. Marvel Snap is another example of this. Owned by TikTok, but that's a small team doing a small project, even though it is, you know, in association with Marvel. It's a tricky conversation, but at the end of the day, 120 different outlets voted on it, and guess what? Because it sparked this conversation, Dave the Diver's not winning the award.
No, it's certainly not. And I'm not going to weigh too much in on it for two reasons. First of all, I think you summed it up. I may actually change it to 3 reasons. We'll see as my thoughts go on.
Oh, okay.
Second of all, I don't give a shit. Ultimately, I mean, but now
piece of shit out here, guys. I'm trying to get him to care.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit because I don't know, and I could never know. I mean, like, I guess I'd put it behind who's financing it. You know, if it's a big name publisher that's giving these guys a bunch of money to do it, I think that kind of takes out what makes an indie game or an indie project in general. This also applies to film, indie. Because it's kind of, that always seems like it's something that's made from the ground up. It's not something that money comes trickling down to try and make as much money as possible. It's one where you really are either doing it for the passion of art because you aren't going to really turn a profit, or you just cross your fingers hoping that it just catches the winds and makes a lot of money.
So Connor, to that though, Bothel Games is a small independent studio. That's an indie game dev studio, but they've worked on some big IP, namely John Wick, with John Wick Hex. Their next deal is with Disney. Disney's their publisher, and they're doing a Tron game. Is that still an indie game?
I think we'd have to see what game it is when it gets announced. I think it's too early to tell because I do also think it's married with the fact that the game itself can't be these sprawling big, games that we usually expect from the bigger titles like Naughty Dog, like Santa Monica, those guys. So I do think it's a melding of those two things, but I just think first and foremost, is the studio owned by a company, or are they just being, given money to do a project? That in tandem with the product that's coming out is really what determines whether it's an indie game or not.
So if a smaller studio is owned by a big boy, a $1 billion corporation, does that changes it for you?
I would say yes, but it's like I said, when you get into the weeds, it's when it becomes a lot harder, because I'm sure you can bring up certain games that were in that situation that could be way more considered.
My next
an indie
example
game.
Is Concrete Genie.
Yes.
Is Concrete Genie an indie game? It's got a budget behind it, definitely. It's a studio owned by PlayStation, but was that game an indie game?
But from my understanding, as someone who hasn't played Concrete Genie, the game itself wasn't, a high, it wasn't an expensive seeming game. It didn't have the best graphical quality. It didn't seem like it had the length or content in the game to justify having actually a bunch of money thrown into it, despite the fact that it might have been owned or, produced by one of these larger studios. Who was the one that gave a bunch of money to it?
Well, it's a PlayStation. It was a PlayStation.
PlayStation.
They may have been closed down by now. I don't remember.
They were closed down. Yeah,
they were closed, right? Yeah. That's a PlayStation Studios game. But again, it's a smaller team with a smaller budget. They didn't have the big AAA push, and it was a game that likened itself to quote unquote indie games, the lo-fi gaming experience. People who like playing, those chill experiences would have loved playing Concrete Genie. Does that, if it looks like it, smells like it, has the budget of it, does that make it an indie game? Or because it has the security of having a huge publisher behind it, does that disqualify it?
See that's when you get into the monetary side of things, because sure, like you said, they're a Sony studio. Do we know how much money was given to them to
I'm
allow
sure
for this
you can
project
find
to
it.
be
I don't know
completed?
it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that's where it kind of hinges on, because of
But
course,
Dave
even
the
though they have a
Diver is
bunch of
in the
money,
same Dave the Diver is in the same situation here.
you see, but at that point, like it said, they're making 1.8 billion dollars in revenue. I think at that point, you went over the hump of, even though you're
Well,
independent,
the
not owned
company
by
is
those
not
bigger
Dave the
people.
Diver. Dave the
No,
Diver
I
didn't
know.
make
Yes.
$1.8 billion.
No, the company did, and at that point, it seems like it's more just window dressing to be like an indie game. But meanwhile, the company can spend as much money as they want to on it, so it never had to go to the length that actual indie games who don't have the money behind it to make their game. So I think I kind of more err on the side of people saying that it doesn't deserve to be in the indie game because of that reason. But like I said, it's so muddied that the style and presentation of the game couldn't allow it to slip past and become one of the nominees for it.
Connor, speaking of nominees and categories, the Game Awards has considered adding Best Remake and Best Supporting Actor awards. But producer Jeff Keighley says each has their own pros and cons. Again, this is from the same Twitch Q&A. Again, still VGC, all of this whole topic. Keighley was asked if there were any plans for new award categories at Game Awards. Keighley replied that while there are no new categories this year, the idea of adding new categories is regularly discussed. Quote, nothing new this year, he said. I've seen people online saying, why don't you have a best DLC category, which is kind of like the ongoing game category. Typically, that's been live service games, but this year Cyberpunk 2077 is nominated. And when people ask why it's nominated, well, because they improved the base game in a big way with version 2.0 and Phantom Liberty. So that's sort of in that category. The other thing people always ask is, why don't we have a best remake or best remaster category? We've talked about it. I think the question is, are there 5 amazing remakes every year? Some years there are. There were some amazing ones this year. Obviously, Resident Evil 4 is nominated for Game of the Year. Dead Space, a bunch of other good ones that came out this year. And the question always then is, would those remakes not be eligible for Game of the Year? So yeah, nothing new this year category-wise, but it's definitely something that we talk about every year, and we try to evaluate the best way to go about that. Later in the stream, Keighley was then asked if a Best Supporting Actor category is something that could be added to the show, given the increased number of impressive performances made possible by improving capture technology. Keighley replied that this was another category that's been discussed, but that its inclusion would have both pros and cons. Quote, we've talked about it. There are lots of great performances. On the other side, we do have some people who say you guys focus a bit too much on the narrative aspect of games, and you're too much like the Oscars. You have writing and acting and those type of awards, and you should be focused more on gameplay-driven things. Supporting performance is something we've definitely thought about. I'm proud that our acting award has always been gender neutral. We started in 2014. We don't have actor and actress awards. We really just blend them into one acting category, which I think was the right call we made back in the day. So yeah, we've talked about it. No plans this year, but it's definitely something that has been brought up before. And then he plugs the chat. So Connor, what is your take here? Let's start with best remake.
Yeah, and
and just the new categories, new things like that.
Which is certainly the hardest bit, right? Because remakes nowadays, I mean, we've seen things like Dead Space and Resident Evil 4, where they're so, at least in the case of Resident Evil 4, since I played it, is so substantially different from where its origins come from that it kind of justifies the argument that there shouldn't be, since they're games that stand on their own merit. But then you have things like Dead Space, which I do know stick more to the traditional experience of Dead Space, changing things like having the main character voice acted, and that's about it. The main thing that they change.
No, there's level design difference. There's a huge
level design differences.
Yeah.
Which, okay, in that case, it kind of
a lot of it is the same. A lot of it is the same, but there are things that change, like when the other ship crashes into you, that's a different level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So that kind of helps me, be less muddy on my decision, which I think there should be another category for that, because it kind of has a leg up over the other games in that category, in the sense that it has a baseline to work from. Not in the sense of like a sequel where they still have to come up with incredibly new plot threads for the characters, enhance gameplay in different ways, change up gameplay to make the a sequel be more justified. They have a baseline that they built up from to improve, certain game mechanics, story elements, level design aspects, all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of its own art form in its own right, is being able to remake a game, which I think kind of justifies, recognizing when they do that above and beyond other remakes that come out that year. And now that we have more remakes coming out, it also justifies having, however many games beyond the remake list. Though I can see also why people would say, it's, why act like it's different or should be in a different category when ultimately the categories themselves serve the function that you're looking for in terms of diversifying your picks.
I fall more to that. First of all, I think this year's an exception. We have a lot of remasters, a lot of remakes happening this year. So it would make sense for a year like this, but this year isn't like other years. This year was heavy. There was a lot of games that got released because they got delayed from COVID, pandemic times, and all that. Whereas we had sort of a back catalog that we had to catch up on, and 2023 was the year that happened. Guess what? Next year isn't going to be as heavy as this year, and it's going to be a hard time to find a year as heavy as this year. So I just don't think there's a point in having that category, because so often it's going to be so hard to find 5 games that really had any meaningful moment because they were a remaster or because they were a remake. It just doesn't happen like it happens here. And next, I think adding that category, though it is a cool idea. I like the idea of it, recognizing specifically the work of people who, put in work in a remaster or in a remake. You think about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. That was a team. A team put that together. They did a bunch of new assets and textures for the first game and reworked its combat and all that. And that was a lot of work. And congratulations, that team did a phenomenal job. And they were rewarded for that in sales, certainly, and in reception, certainly. Have they been recognized, by the Game Awards? Maybe, but at the same time, putting that category in the list would immediately start disqualifying games that deserve to be nominated for Game of the Year from being nominated. If that category exists, I don't think Resident Evil 4 gets nominated this year. And I think I've planted a flag last week. Resident Evil 4 Remake deserves to be nominated for Game of the Year. That is a Game of the Year worthy candidate. Now, also, a remake can be so many different things now. It gets messy. The conversation gets messy. If we introduce that category next year, for example, does Final Fantasy VII Rebirth go into that category?
No. It's a completely different kind of remake. It's just not the same at all. Even though
not
the recent one wouldn't even.
But if you do, it will be. Is the point? But it shouldn't be, because that's a new game. It's going in new directions. Spoilers. They're doing new things in it. That's not a remake. The first game also not a remake. And so all of that gets really, really tricky. And I think I would rather have the opportunity for games like Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space to even be considered for Game of the Year and get that Game of the Year nomination. Whereas if you give them their own category, it happens that way. And I think this is such a small niche thing that it's just not necessary to have it. You're not going to have it every year. I'm kind of surprised we added video game adaptations last year, because I don't know if it's going to keep continuing at the pace it's going at. Clearly, last year and this year there was enough to keep it going. Will there be next year? I don't know, maybe, but who knows? And now you look at other categories of more niche genres of games and how they haven't necessarily been able to fill out their rosters either. Case in point, Sifu was nominated for Best Fighting Game last year. Sifu's not a fighting game. So it's just what are we doing here, man? Action adventure and action games, I think there's a clear delineation between those two categories. But that's not agreed upon with everybody, and there's a lot of crossing wires of those two categories all the time. What do we do with that? If we start setting up hard rules in a medium that's so fluid, it gets harder to have shows like this.
And you know that point makes a lot of sense. You don't know how the world's going to end up. The gaming world, particularly, is going to end up, and whether there's going to be a bunch of adaptations or remakes in subsequent years. But I feel like this is, does all this have to be set in stone? I mean, I remember there was a time when the Game of the Year awards, like when Spike was hosting it, they would change the amount of Game of the Year nominations that would happen for the Game of the Year moniker. And it happens so far out of the year, this Game Awards, they can decide before the actual show's details are, decided upon to say, okay, what remakes are out, what adaptations, going back to that, are out, and should we have this category for this year? Because it seems like an easy thing to just take out whenever you feel is necessary, which I think curbs around the whole niche argument. And I think it more is a matter of just, whether remakes deserve their own category on the merits of their games alone. But all of this is a very hard decision, as opposed to the Best Supporting Actor awards, which it should already have been a thing. And it's good that they're probably going to move towards it. I mean,
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off again. But
no,
this is another thing that I don't see the need for. It's not called Best Leading Performer. It's Best Performance. Lady Dimitrescu won in 2021. That's not the lead character.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. My
21
perspective of it, 2020.
21.
Yes. Then that's true. My perspective of it is that, there could be so many amazing performances in a single year that I think it's best to just recognize as many of them as possible. And, I think certain times, for example, we can look towards this year with Idris Elba being one of the best performances.
Mm-hmm.
That there's better main performances than him. He's getting up there because he's a celebrity. It's happened in the past.
Hold on. I've also heard he delivered a great performance.
Oh, I have heard he has as well, but I've also heard from most people who played that Cyberpunk DLC that within that alone, there were a ton of other people who just did a better job and had more moments to shine as well. And I that's kind of my point, is that when you have the Best Supporting Actor awards, you can get more people who might, voice acting is a hard industry to get into. And some people, perform their hearts out. And just to be overshadowed by someone like Idris Elba because of his name brand, as much as he might deserve it, I think that kind of is curbed when you have Best Supporting Actor, and you can just start bringing up more of those smaller names instead of the big ones, who, even if you don't have that celebrity name attached to it, I feel like you're still going to get the main character in a game out. They kind of get prioritized over the supporting actors, regardless of the quality, if you compare the quality of the two voice actors. I just think when it's dealing with specific people, it's kind of good to give more people a voice and a spotlight than just a select few.
Yeah, I see that point. It's valid in my mind, but I also think that there's more to video games than the performances, and more to video games than the narratives and so forth. And that's a point Keeley brings up, is that, hey man, there's 2 or 3 awards already dedicated to that pillar of the industry. Like, do we need to spend more time on that? We only have so much time in a show, Yeah. Could we figure out something more mechanics based to award or something? I don't know if we can. It's hard to determine that. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I like that the Game Awards is fluid, though. I like that they're willing to try new things, rebrand certain categories. I like that they're willing to bring things in, take things out, change things around. I think it's why the show is working and continues to work, is because they're learning from their lessons, and they're trying to figure out the best way to do things. And I think that's why it's my favorite award show.
It is very fun. I can't think of another award show that I watch. Yeah, there's not another award show that I watch. So there you go. I agree.
Finally, Keeley explains why TGAs are moving from world premiere branding. Asked by a viewer about the number of world premieres the public should expect from the Game Awards 2023, Keeley replied, "I don't know if there will be the same amount. I haven't counted, honestly. I think around the same, but I don't know. Also, what is a world premiere? Actually, you'll see this year we often put up those cards, world premiere, world premiere. We're kind of moving away from that, just because everything's kind of, is it a first look? Is it an announcement, etc.? So we just treat it all as great game content." The host and producer said viewers should expect a similar runtime and amount of content to previous years. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's kind of one of the best parts of the Game of the Year awards. So it seems like it's at first when I read this.
Now let's clarify. They're not saying they're getting rid of
No.
announcements and premieres and things like that. We're still getting that. They're just not going to call it world premiere anymore. Like what? Like why do that?
Yeah, which was my first point. When I first read this, I was like, oh, they're getting rid of it. The Game Awards are going to go down in quality substantially because that's one of the things people really go for. But I mean, I guess I'll push back because world premiere seems pretty self-explanatory. It's like it's the first time you're hearing something, and it's using a grand naming convention to try and amp up what the Game Awards are. Could they just? I think like to counteract, to balance out other things with like, okay, this game has already been announced. Well, why should we call that world premiere? Just call it something different. It's not. I don't think it's so hard to have just a different title card to create one.
It then also it creates a balance thing of how much attention is paid to each item. You watch world premiere happens and your ears perk up. You pay more attention. You focus on what's coming next, and I find myself more bored by quote unquote world premieres than I do just trailers and gameplay development things that we already know about, but we're seeing gameplay for the first time, or we're seeing an extended demo this time or something like that. I get more out of the things that don't have world premiere tied to them than the things that do, but because they put in that emphasis on it, I sit there and I go, oh, this is important, and it may not be.
Yeah. I think a good middle ground is to kind of go the way of what some of the showcases that we see coming out throughout the year from Nintendo and PlayStation, where they just kind of do trailers back to back. They have moments where they're like, okay, trailers are coming out, a couple of them, and they just kind of bleed into one another. I think that's worked for those showcases. I mean, they get eyes on them, and it casts off the moniker of world premiere, which they seem to have at least some issue with.
Yeah.
And that's just like a kind of middle ground. But overall, I don't think it's going to have, regardless of how they adapt it going forward, I don't think it's going to change people's, expectations. I don't think it's going to bring down the excitement of the games, because ultimately, this is all just window dressing. What really excites people is what they're showing us. Like, for example, the announcement for Joker and Smash Brothers. That was humongous. I don't believe they had a world premiere. It didn't have any impact on it.
I don't know if they were doing quote unquote world premiere cards back. They may have been. I don't remember. They may have. So long ago.
But even regardless of whether they did or didn't, it still had that impact. It didn't need any kind of fanfare prior to it.
Well, and I mean, like, Keely's smart, man. He's got his ear to the ground. He knows he's got a decent pulse. Like he's got a decent finger on the pulse when it comes to the industry and what is going to be big, what is going to be huge. I believe last year he went in. Maybe this was for SGF this year, now that I think about it, actually. But for one of his shows, he was like, hey, guys, not the biggest year. It's going to be some cool stuff, but, just not going to be the biggest year. It just isn't. Don't expect Joker and Smash level things. Don't expect big thing. I think that was for Game Awards last year that he said that, and then we got Hades 2. And I was like, hey, Hades 2, that's pretty cool. And so, like, I don't see any... Keely is running the show. He's the host. He's producing it and so forth. He does the run of shows and all that. I think he's got a pretty good idea of what are the moments where he needs to be on stage with a microphone and saying, hey, guys, pay attention to this part. And we'll pay attention to it when he cues us to. Otherwise, it's totally fine to get 3 trailers back to back in between an award.
Yeah. Who cares? People still have fun.
Yeah. I think this one's gonna be big. I think this is gonna be a good one. Mm-hmm. I think he's got some joints. Because there's a lot of question marks we still have about next year, in terms of releases and so forth. And it's the 10th anniversary for it, and I think 23andMe has been a great year for gaming. This is gonna be a good year. I'm excited, as long as any of you motherfuckers stop running up on fucking stage and ruining it for us all.
They did not ruin it.
Connor, let's move on real quickly to our last topic of the day. Your last penny as well. Take it away from me, my friend.
We got an article from Kotaku from Ethan Gach here. Sony fails to kill $7.9 billion lawsuit over PlayStation Store prices. A lawsuit filed last year accused Sony of using its walled garden video game platform to charge players too much in the PlayStation Store. The London Tribunal has now allowed that lawsuit to move forward against the PS5 maker's objections, which could result in payments to players in the UK of up to $7.9 billion if it is ultimately successful. The case began last August and basically claimed that anti-competitive practices by Sony allowed it to get away with charging a 30% commission on all sales in the PlayStation Store rather than charging a smaller amount and passing the savings on to customers. Sony tried to get the case dismissed, but today the Competition Appeal Tribunal sided against the platform holder, saying it, quote, failed to establish that the complaint has no reasonable grounds for making the claims, no real prospect of it succeeding at trial, end quote. The case brought by consumer advocate Alex Neal, who will now proceed with the two sides arguing on its merits. To be clear, Sony isn't accused of doing anything unusual here, like manipulating prices in secret. What the lawsuit is taking issue with is the same thing every modern gaming platform does, charging fees while blocking out competition. The lawsuit claims that by failing to allow third parties to sell directly on the PlayStation Store, it's limiting competition and driving up prices for players. We've heard a version of these complaints in the US with the Epic versus Apple lawsuit and the current Epic versus Google court trial. The Fortnite company accused the App Store and Google Play Store of charging exorbitant commissions to anyone else who wants to do business on the platforms. Imagine the potential issues, for instance, if your PC could only install Steam and Valve's storefront was the only way to access games on it. Those arguments haven't fared well so far in the US. We'll see if the Sony lawsuit in the UK goes any different. So, I guess my quick take on this is I remember when, damn it, I lost my point earlier. I forgot it. Never mind, Tavin, take it away.
I'll take it away.
I'll try and remember it.
Yeah, good luck. I don't think you're getting anywhere with this. I think it'd be cool if, we could play around with pricing models for games. I've always said that. Does everything need to be $70? Does everything need to be $50? Can something be $20? Can something be $80? It's hard to tell, and I think it's based off of, its basis should be determined game to game. However, I do see the point that, hey, it's a digital media. Why is it not cheaper than physical media? I do see the point of, hey, why are you charging the same commission for every game studio out there in the world? But I believe it's usually a 70-30 split. It's pretty standard, industry-wide, platform-wide, console, PC, anything. Like, usually 70-30 is about it. Epic wants to be competitive and does a much smaller revenue split. Good for them. Is it working? I don't know. They laid off a bunch of people this year. So you have to sit back and you have to wonder, man, is this something that we're gonna see? I don't know. I don't think so. I think Sony is well within their right to sell games at the rate that they're able to sell them. And I think if another platform holder wants to be competitive, they'll drop the price. But I don't know.
I remember my point was, I remember when the Activision Blizzard deal was going through, all the courts were deciding on whether this is a deal that's worth going forward, and Sony was one of the big people who came forward and said, well, they have control. What was their argument exactly, Tavin? They said they have control over
something like that was anti-competitive.
Call of Duty. I think it was centered around Call of Duty, like how much money it makes in that sphere.
Everything was centered around Call of Duty.
Yeah, right. And I remember them complaining and just kind of like crying, wah, wah, wah. And that I remembered when I was reading this article, that was the thing that kind of rung up in my mind, that they're always trying to do whatever they can to get as much money as possible. And I think they might, understand that, yeah, third parties should have more control over how their games are specifically sold on the PlayStation market, especially if they're going to be bought as a PS4 copy of the game. And so they should have a little bit more stake in the selling aspect of it. And Sony is just trying to, get as much money as they can, save as much money from being lost. And they're just, they can go screw themselves. I mean, do they need more money? Answer me, Tavin. Do they need more money?
Apparently, they laid off a bunch of people this year. So
yeah, exactly. So it doesn't even really matter, right? They're just gonna screw over their workers anyway. Who gives a shit? Let them fucking burn for this.
Yeah, I mean, again, $7.9 billion lawsuit. First of all, you're not getting nearly $8 billion out of Sony for this, even if it does go your way. I mean, it is the UK. UK's are sticklers. We found that out during the Activision Blizzard acquisition as well, that the UK can be some sticklers about it. But I mean, it's not going well in the US with Epic v Apple and Epic v Google. It's not going well for Epic on that front, and it's kind of upsetting because it's an interesting conversation that's happening in the background. And this is another one that is an interesting conversation to happen in the background. But if I were to guess, it's not really going to go anywhere, and we're not going to see any real big differences, even though I would really, really appreciate seeing those differences. is PS5 is PlayStation ripping players off? I don't know. I don't think so. Like,
Nah,
are things more expensive now? Yeah, but things are more expensive across the board. My eggs are more expensive. So, like, yeah, my video games got more expensive too. It kind of makes sense. Every streaming service in the world has upped their prices this year. So it's just like, all right, cool. Are they ripping us off? I don't know.
I will say
that's on your perspective, not mine.
they most definitely are ripping us off and increasing the games by $10. They didn't need to do that. They know they didn't need to do that. Look at the layoffs. They didn't give two shits about giving more money.
Apparently, it wasn't enough, Connor. They should have gone $15 up. Should be $17
right?
for every AAA game.
See, we messed up. This whole situation was messed up. The solution is to give us more money. A very reasonable argument. I should make that argument.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for the news, considering... Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for the news this week. But don't go anywhere. We have the return of the Two Penny Game Club. That's right. An hour and 10 minutes into the podcast, we got more podcasts for you. We got a 45-minute Tomb Raider review. Who wants to talk about Tomb Raider? Stick around to find out. But remember, you can catch this show every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Drop a comment down below about some topics of conversation you wish we would have on the show so that we can get an audience 2 pennies, 2 cents in. And until next time, have a great time. Connor, say goodbye to the people.
See you in different clothes.
What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Game Club, your monthly video game book club in which me, your host, Tavin Bothel, sits down with his good friends and co-hosts. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hello, how are you guys doing today with the Game Club, the monthly
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And say hello, Phil Shoemaker.
Hey, what's up, guys? Connor definitely almost called this the piggy bank.
Ladies and gentlemen,
What?
The Game Club is your monthly video game book club in which me and these two lovely lads right here, we in the background play a video game, and then at the beginning of every month review that video game for your enjoyment. We reach into the annals of history, pull a game out selected upon by the majestic wheel, and play it and rank it amongst the other games that we've played on the Game Club. This month is Tomb Raider 2013, the reboot from Crystal Dynamics. Some quick facts about Tomb Raider. It was initially released March 5th, 2013. It currently has a Metacritic of 86, and reportedly, Tomb Raider sold 3.4 million copies in 4 weeks, and publisher Square Enix has revealed it did not hit the game's sale target. So, it was one of those lovely Square Enix games that like sold a bunch but failed to meet expectations, and everybody goes, well, then what was your expectations? Because 3.4 million in 4 weeks is fucking great. Those are great sales figures. What is going on here?
They never meet any of their expectations with any of their games.
Dude, this is when Square Enix was at its worst, like with things failing to meet expectations, where it was like, hey, this is a great game, but it failed. How? Around this time, Sleeping Dogs was also released and sold about 1.75 million. Hitman Absolution, which was not a great Hitman game, not fantastic, sold 3.6 million.
Give us the Sleeping Dogs sequel.
I'm saying, or like, they already did a PS4 remaster, didn't they? Yeah, probably not worth doing a PS5 remaster for that one. But yeah, probably Sleeping Dogs was a lot of fun. Can we just take a break and just talk about how fun Sleeping Dogs was? Good combat, fun like mini games. Is that and stuff?
Is that on the Game Club?
It's not. I don't know why it's not. I haven't played it.
I never beat it. I put probably about 10 hours into it, and I was like, this is good. Driving wasn't very good. Driving kind of sucked. But, the combat was a lot of fun. Gentlemen, we have all played Tomb Raider. And I kind of want to go first on this one. And I want to say, when reviewing Tomb Raider here, I feel like I'm going to come off pretty negative about this game. Let me get in front of that and say, I think this game is good. I think it's got moments of really great fun. But overall, in terms of games we've played for this show, this is the most derivative, soulless, and just bland game that I think we've ever played on the Game Club. Like, I really feel like this game tried to be so many others of its time, so many other contemporaries, namely Uncharted, and really failed to capture what makes any of those games good. It does try to make its own like unique identity and so forth through its gameplay mechanics and through its story, which actually is my biggest issue with the game. Its narrative and story wants to be taken seriously, but the quality of writing is not up to par with even games that were released around its time, namely The Last of Us, which released the same year. Now, granted, The Last of Us is an expectation that, you know, we should not put on games like this, but when you want me to believe your story, when you want me to feel for your character, when you want me to explore the emotional grayness of being a survivor and doing what it takes to survive, but and feel for the sanctity of human life as Laura kills her first human being, and then the next moment give me extra experience points. You give me bonus points for headshots. Like, those two things are at odds with each other, and it really creates a disconnect for me, and it just led me to feel like this story had no weight. I don't think the writing is particularly good. It rushes a lot of its plot points, and I think its character writing specifically is pretty piss poor outside of Lara Croft and her father figure. And then I also feel like the game struggles to balance narrative and gameplay throughout its entire adventure. When Laura, in the beginning of the game, suffers a mortal wound, and then they don't address that wound ever, until hours later, like a full in-game day later, when she like trips and falls and they pretend like the wound reopened. She never closed it in the first place. So it just led to a moment of like, hey, you want this to be a survivor story, but you're doing nothing to have the stakes reflect that. So it just led to a very emotionless experience for me. Don't get me wrong, I think the gameplay is pretty serviceable. It holds up fairly well for being a decade old. It definitely suffers from sort of the tropes of the time, and I don't think the game overall holds up super well. And as we get further and further away from it, it's only going to get worse and worse. But overall, like, I do think it is fun to shoot enemies. It is fun to duck into cover and blow things up. But there's just nothing really original about this game, and overall it leads me to believe that this is the most forgetful game we've played yet. Forgettable game we've played yet, I should say. Connor, where are you at with Tomb Raider?
Well, all of the points you made are fair, and I would say right. I'm pretty much agreeing with you that it's a fine game. It has combat that is serviceable. It suffers from the curse of being way, way too easy, so every single combat encounter just felt like it didn't even push me at all. The times that I would die the most are during the cinematic moments, where if you just do something slightly wrong, you die. It was never annoying, it was never a problem, but when that's the hardest parts of your game, I don't think changing it to hard would have made that much of a difference. And I remember playing this game a lot back in the day, because it was one of the first games that came out for the PS4, and I played it on hard mode, and I remember beating it pretty easily then.
To be fair,
and I was younger.
It launched on PS3 and Xbox 360. You played a remastered version that launched in 2014.
Oh, yeah. Well, time slips me by. I can't remember when games came out in 2021, so how am I going to remember that kind of stuff? But, I played a lot of it at the time, and going back to it now, it truly doesn't hold up the same way. The cinematic moments feel very in its time, lots of slow-mo, lots of just sliding down. Like, I think there's 3 different segments where you're sliding down some kind of hill, and you have to shoot barricades that pop up with your shotgun. All of it is incredibly easy. Like I said, only mistime movements would cause my death, and I just have to start over. Big deal. I do like the world building that you were able to take part in with the collectibles, whether it be the documents, the Japanese style artifacts, sometimes Chinese and Korean ones that just give you a little bit of history on them, really sell who Lara Croft is. She's a historian who's trying to become a survivor. But as you said, Tavin, its survivor story is at odds with the power fantasy that it's got going on. One moment wants you to be like an action hero, like from like characters from Die Hard or Commando or anything like that, and then tell this gritty story, and it just never, those elements are never really explored all that well. A lot of characters that end up dying throughout this story, it gives you small moments with them, so you're never able to get attached to them. Even if there are bits of personality that you can't attach to yourself with these characters, it goes away so quickly that it has no real effect on you. And it does kind of leave me in the same way that I can't remember what other game we played on the cast that was gave me the same feeling of looking forward to what's coming next, especially knowing that the second game apparently improves on a lot of the elements that this first one laid the groundwork for.
Probably
But-
Uncharted.
Yeah, which it feels a lot like, even though it came out after Uncharted 2, and definitely Uncharted 3 was out by this point.
The
I
whole
believe,
trilogy
correct?
is out.
Yeah,
by
the whole
this
trilogy was out. Yeah, it seems like it looked what the first Uncharted game did and tried to make its own game based off that. And by the point it came out, it had already been surpassed by its contemporaries, being the other Uncharted games. So it just feels like it, it's kind of just fine across the board. The story's not bad. I'm not like wanting to shoot myself in the head because it's so cringy or awkward. It's just, it's like when you watch an average movie in the theater that you forget in the next couple days. It's not bad when you're doing it, but after you leave and think about it for a while, you find out that you don't really think about it all that much. It's just another game to check off mentally in your list of, oh, I played that game, which unfortunately isn't what most games should ascribe to being. But, for a game that was first in its series and one that came out, kind of when games could really be a lot more hit or miss compared to how they are nowadays. It was a serviceable game through and through enough.
Phil, you're the only person I've not talked to about Tomb Raider with. How are you feeling about it?
Well, I mean, you guys live together, so
Yeah.
I imagine you guys kind of chit chat about that kind of stuff. I kind of want to open my little review here with a hot take. We recently, well, not recently, but we've played the first Uncharted game in the series, and that was so this was the second time me playing through this game, and it was also the second time me playing through Uncharted, and this game's more fun than the first Uncharted game.
Sure, in moments.
Yeah. That's my hot take. That this game's more fun.
Not a hot take, Phil. Not a hot take
Is
at
it
all.
not?
No.
Okay,
It's a take.
I thought I would get some pushback from that.
I think you're wrong, but it's not a hot take.
I don't know if it's just the amount of time that I guess hadn't passed by. So like I was too familiar with the first Uncharted game when we replayed it, as opposed to how this game was. So there's some stuff I didn't really remember until I like got back to it. But I mean, I don't know. There's just something about this game that felt more fun to me. I enjoy, as simple as they are, I enjoy a lot of like the environmental puzzles that they have in the optional tombs. I enjoy a lot of the physics that are in that. Well, some of it is frustrating, especially like there's like one where like you open a wall of like wind that pushes something.
Oh yeah, that one was
through.
annoying.
That one, as frustrating as it is, I did understand where I was going wrong, and I enjoyed that puzzle overall. I can't remember how many there are, but I want to say I did like 4 or 5 of them, and I still breezed through this game. I was telling the guys before we started recording that I finished this in one day, not in one sitting, but altogether I want to say it was no longer than like 9 hours me playing through this whole game. But yeah, it's like y'all have been saying, it's serviceable. It's fine as a game. I recognize that while Uncharted might be a better game overall, I just, like I said, I think this is more fun. I enjoyed the satisfaction that was given. I had the most fun just using the bow than any other weapon in this game. I just thought it was really satisfying going through and getting those headshots. The pistol just feels so. It doesn't feel like the gun combat in this game doesn't feel like weighty. It doesn't feel like heavy. Like it feels like it should be heavier. As like weird of a thing to say that is. I just feel like it's so. It's like I'm hitting them with like a shotgun filled with feathers. And like that's what's popping out and piercing them is like a bunch of feathers. But no, that I think for that reason, it kind of the bow worked for me the most because it felt the most accurate. Not like accurate in terms of like precision. I just mean like in terms of like, yeah, this is me pulling a bow and loosing it. This is about how it should feel.
The game feels
at least to me
right on that one.
Yeah, for the bow and arrow. And that's not what you think of when you think, at least the classic Tomb Raider with the double pistols and all that. But I guess that's more of a thing for this new generation of Tomb Raider. And I am. There's part of me that's excited for when we get to the later games, because I don't think I ever played the third one, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That's the third one. I did not play that one. I got Rise of the Tomb Raider, I think, like around the first week it came out, and I like that one a lot. I made the. I'm not much of a. So when Shadow of the Tomb Raider came out, I think I recognize it as a mistake now, but I made the mistake of buying Fallout 4 instead of that game, even though I've never really touched a Fallout game before then.
You've got those backwards. Fallout 4 came out same week as Rise, is the second one.
Did it?
Yeah, that's why. It's why, because Shadow of the Tomb Raider is not made by Crystal Dynamics. They're made by Eidos Montreal, because Crystal got moved on to Avengers.
Wow! Oh my gosh!
That
fucked with my head right there.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Because I think it was like a thing where like Square recognized that Crystal had a lot of talent. But they just weren't seeing the success with this series that they wanted to see, whatever that meant. Like, this first game was successful. And then, Rise of the Tomb Raider. I didn't play it till a year later when it came to PS4.
When did Shadow of the Tomb Raider come out?
2018? No, before then. 2020, because Uncharted
2018. Oh my god.
Oh, wow. Was it really 18? Okay, wow.
Why can't this be the minigame?
The one time Connor got it.
I know.
That's nuts. Like, that literally just breaks my brain right there.
Yeah.
That's insane. Oh my god. All right, never mind. Fuck everything that I just said about like between Fallout 4 and it must have been Rise then. But no, I remember liking Rise a lot more than Fallout, because I'm not much of a Fallout guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, talking about Tomb Raider here. I did think that the story was serviceable enough. I liked some of the characters we had, even though a lot of the characters we kind of talked to weren't really around that much. It was very much just focused on Lara and her journey and trying to reunite with them. And like, sure, we'll talk to them on the radio and stuff, and we'll talk to Roth and all that. But like our other crew that we kind of meet and help out or whatever, there was some like weird conflict between Lara and I think her name was like Reyes or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, it feels so forced. Like, it's like, why are you so mad at Lara? Like, she's just as fucked up in this position as you are. Like, what are you mad that she didn't rescue you sooner? Like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know.
It's like everybody gets their scene. They get their singular scene, and that's it. Yeah. Alex dies, and you're like, that was awkward. That was very strange. So, okay.
You know, to your point, Phil, it tried to do this thing where since she got them to the island, it's her fault.
Okay.
But it's so unreasonable on every single level that it never really makes sense. Not only when Lara's beating herself up about it, but when Reyes is as well. It's just like, well, none of you guys were all trying to find the island.
Yeah, you guys all agreed to this expedition. It's not just Lara's fault. Like, I liked the chef guy. I thought he was fun. I liked him as just Jonah. That's his name.
I just think the story suffers so much from like wanting to reflect emotion through just giving a line of dialogue as opposed to like actually have actions matter in this game. And again, I think it's because of your disconnect between gameplay and narrative. Like the two have nothing to do with each other. They're just so like separated. Phil, you did say the puzzles. I think the puzzles in this game are actually pretty good. There are moments where I was, you got to sit there and think. Did you guys find the tomb where it's like the little light that is in the water and electrifying the water?
Yeah.
And you got to lift it. That's a great puzzle. That's a really good puzzle.
It's
like
good.
I really enjoyed that.
That one might be my favorite optional tomb.
It's certainly up there for me. I didn't do them all, but I did them as I found them. Very often I would just like trip and fall my way into them, thinking it was the critical path, and then I'd be like, oh, this is just a tomb. Oh, oops.
I did that with one of them for sure. The other ones I was like full on, oh yeah, let me go do this real quick.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how weak this antagonist was too?
Dude, like, what the fuck, man?
I feel like when we were introduced to Matthias, he's just like, oh, I'm this hermit that lives on this island by myself. And you're talking.
And they give it no room to breathe.
Right?
You immediately don't trust him. You're like, you're a bad guy. Like,
but even then, like, Lara passes out, and then you wake up and they're gone.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, let me go try to find them. But it's not even like okay, so I guess he's just now fully bad. Like I wasn't even like I remembered him being the bad guy. So I'm wondering if maybe the first time I also thought he was the bad guy immediately. But I don't know.
I mean, I couldn't tell you. Like, it's just that the character writing is, I think, very weak in this game.
It just felt so abrupt.
Matthias is the worst villain ever, man. This dude's, I don't even know what his goal was. Like, he wanted to reawaken the sun god for what? Why?
See, that was the weird thing, because it was to get off the island, because he would do her a service, and then she would allow him to leave. But it doesn't make sense when it's like, well, you're there. You could have gotten and destroyed it. You didn't need to go through this whole shebang, which I guess the whole background is that he's crazy. So his actions don't really make sense. Yeah, that was his whole thing. He's like, I'm a survivor. I'm going to get off this island for damn forever.
I feel like my interpretation was for a while he wanted to get off, but eventually he just bought into his own craziness, and now he just wants to like run this sun god cult or something. Like, and
well, that's what's so weird to me is I don't understand his goal.
Yeah.
Okay. So
other than resurrecting this empress or whatever.
Also, it felt pretty clear that the goddess is just going to kill him as soon as she's revived.
So did you guys read the documents relating to him?
Not really.
I did that. That's why I do credit the world building of this game, because his actions make a lot more sense, because he was clearly just he was crazy, but he was a meticulous guy who was using everybody just to get off the island. It was clear that he brought up all this stuff of revering her and whatnot because he could use that to get them to do what he wants, to treat her as an actual goddess, while he's just trying to get off the island. That was his entire, like, behind the scenes. That's what his plan was. He's a manipulator. Okay. He's a survivor, as he would put it. But I agree. It's not done well in the moments where you actually interact with him or see what he's doing. So it's kind of hard to put a lot of your bets on pick up collectibles that are scattered throughout the world to make your character somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
So
the one
that needs to be like in the story itself.
Sure. That should not be like an optional thing. One thing that I'll praise about, like, I mean, as weak as the character writing is in this game, I really enjoyed the whenever you'd find a new campfire to rest at, Lara would like write in her journal about it. I really enjoyed that part of it. I thought that was really, really cool, and kind of her not necessarily giving you like a recap, but it's just like her like writing down her thoughts in that moment,
finding where she is and how she feels. And yeah. I think Laura's character writing is the strongest thing in this game, and it's why, like, I mean, outside of her, she's the only one I'm interested to see in a sequel. Everyone else we can get rid of.
Yeah.
I believe it's Jonah sticks around for the sequel. I don't know about the third game, but he definitely sticks around for the sequel. But it's definitely like, he's just there, and then we go on an adventure, and then we see him maybe again at the end or something like that. But like, I do not care for any of these characters. Like all of them die, and I feel nothing. Like,
I think all of them except for Jonah and Reyes die. Or does Sam live too?
Sam lives as well.
Sam lives? Sam makes it, yeah.
Okay. But yeah,
again, like a character kind of interesting, totally dropped in the next game, nobody cares about. Like, But
my thing is Sam interesting? Is she?
I mean, purely in that she just has the most screen time out of Laura's companions, like, you know, other than Roth. Like,
we should have had more Grimm.
Nah,
I would have liked more Roth. I would have liked more Roth, just like him and Lara. I mean, sure, I get that, like, his death is kind of it allows Lara to kind of become the adventurer and like the new badass, you know, because like she takes everything that he teaches her, and becomes like the Tomb Raider that we remember from like the past games, or she's this badass. What's the anthropologist turned adventurer?
Whitman. Whitman. Professor Whitman.
No, Connor, you're on something else. I don't know what you're on, but you're on something else.
The archaeologist? The anthropologist?
No, Phil was still
talking
talking
about Lara.
Yeah, still
I'm talking about Lara and Roth. I'm not talking about the bullshit TV host guy.
Hey, he was a doctor, dude.
That guy sucked.
Everybody sucks. There's no good character in this game. Everybody's trash. Oh my god. And while, like, I mean, I agree. This game is more fun to play than games like Uncharted, at least Uncharted 1.
Rick's Fortune, yeah.
But it's just like an overall package. Like, there's no clear vision for this game, and like, I don't like the level design. I think is awful. I think its combat scenarios are generic and copy and paste as fuck. I can't tell you the number of times I was just standing by a ladder shooting dudes off of it, or waiting for guys to come off their or shooting dudes off their zip lines. Like the AI is super manipulatable,
Manipulative.
No, because that means they're manipulating.
Manipulate,
yes. It's just really easy to manipulate the enemy AI, and it led to so many moments where I'm literally just shooting down a hallway. There was a moment in the B-roll earlier where I literally just put myself in a corner and then just held down and squeezed and fire, and they all lined up single fire, and that happened all the time in this game. Sure, it is more fun to run and jump and blow things up as opposed to the first Uncharted, but just as an overall package, there's just no vision here, and I think it's just inferior to Uncharted in so many other ways that its fun gameplay doesn't carry it.
Where the fuck did all these explosive barrels come from,
bro?
Dude?
Everywhere. It's 6, 7 in every single combat encounter. They don't feel like treats. And that's another thing. Yeah. Nothing matters in this game. Absolutely nothing matters. They want you to believe that the toll of taking human life means something to Laura, and obviously it's supposed to get easier as you go along. But
sure.
It's not we're fighting 1 or 2 or 3 guys at first, and then by the end of the game, then you're fighting 20 armored dudes. You're fighting 20 dudes and killing 20 dudes within the first hour. And it's Laura was a survivor from the minute she landed on the island. There's no arc here. They want you to think there's an arc, but there isn't one.
It reminds me of that was a lot of people's problem with Drake, in that he's meant to just be this normal dude, but he's fucking taken out entire armies and shit.
That works for me because Uncharted keeps it campy. And they don't even bring up the idea, except for that weird moment in Uncharted 2. At the end of Uncharted 2. They don't even bring up the fact that Drake is killing people.
No, yeah, I'm not saying that this is better in any way. I'm saying it's cranked up to 11.
Right. Yeah, my point is it's noticeable here because they point at it and say, "Wow, look what she has to do." But if
you believe you have to take other human lives,
if Laura was a Nathan Drake type, or how she was in her original games, who was super charismatic and gung ho and was a fun adventurer, then that would be a better fit for this gameplay than what they're doing here. And guess what? The next game, she's a little more confident in her abilities and a little more fun to play as. But yeah, here it's just totally oh man, Laura, stop crying.
Bro, your camera does not like you today.
It's not coming through at all. It's struggling. There we go.
I'll say, Tavin, you brought up how bad the level design is in this game, and how we kind of touched on how let's just say you shouldn't be accidentally stumbling into optional places whenever you're trying to go through the regular story.
I shouldn't think it's the main path.
Yeah. It should be way more clear. I don't care if you have to do the Resident Evil thing and mark things as yellow or whatever to say you have to do all this, but you should make it a lot easier to tell where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to do, exactly what the main story path is.
Even navigating the more linear parts of the level, it's just never you never feel like you're 100% clear that you're going the right way. From a design perspective, I shouldn't be questioning if I'm going the right way. And then when we're in the more open areas, total mess. It's just I don't know, man. This way, I guess. No wonder they had to put a big glowing marker in the sky to be hey, go here, stupid. Also, the map sucks. The map doesn't give you any of the information you need.
Map is not good.
Cluttered.
One thing on par with God of War 2018.
Oh yeah, 100%.
One thing I will say about the level design, because overall it's not good. They make it better than some games out there by having some not rogue-like elements, but you get certain ways to traverse, and if you go back to previous areas, you can get more unlockables.
The Metroidvania type.
Yeah, Metroidvania type. It doesn't do it enough though to really save the whole package, which I think they would have benefited from doing that more. There's really just one section in the game where there's a bunch of different stuff you can do, and then past that it goes back to being more linear. It feels like it would have been a lot more focused though if it did less of the whole, allow you to fast travel to wherever, because like you said, the map doesn't justify you going in and exploring it to the nooks and crannies. Aside from those collectibles, which I think do a good job, the actual areas themselves are just pretty straightforward and bland until they're a little bit confusing, and you have to try and navigate the direct path that you have to go to continue the story. It's like a lot of things in this game where it's just not fully realized at all.
Yeah.
In terms of getting some of those optional upgrades, not optional. In terms of getting those upgrades, are any of them like actually optional, or are they all just like part of the story beats?
Which upgrades? Not one's related to the guns, right?
Like you're talking about things like
related to the
traversal related, or like yeah.
They were all.
You have to get them all.
Okay. So there was one, I think early on, that would just kind of rub me the wrong way, because it's like, oh, I just got this to do this, to like get up this cliff, but there's also a way I could have done it without that, like literally right next to it. Like there's the vines that Lara can climb, but there's a place where you can use the pickaxe and break into the wall. But I could have climbed this cliff without the pickaxe anyway. But it's not like,
I mean,
I don't know.
Usually there's like a way up that takes longer, and then they'll give you an upgrade to get up faster. I don't know the part you're talking about.
I can't remember exactly. It was like one of the first like open areas with all like the huts and stuff.
Yeah,
I know. Okay, I think I know what area you're talking about, but I don't remember any of
it. Just
that.
It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It felt very like, okay, why did you give me this thing here and not like right when I needed it? Really,
I guess. Yeah. I just don't know the part you're talking about. This to me is a game that like clearly the team is talented. Clearly they have a masterpiece in them, but they don't have a director that can like unify the vision and put it all together. And I think that's what we're really missing, is just like a clear, full vision. And it's a lot of like, well, the gameplay team's really good at this, and then the cinematic team is good at this, and then, the set piece team is good at this, and we're just going to kind of duct tape it all together to see how it works as a full package. And then you get to the end of it and you go, all right, that was a fun joyride, but I feel nothing. Like I'm going to forget about this within a week. I already know, which is, not something I like feeling about video games. Gentlemen, is there anything else we want to address before we go ahead and rank this bad boy?
I'm good.
I guess
I've said my piece.
I guess one thing going into the ranking itself, I misunderstood you earlier, Phil. I thought you said the hot take was that this is not as good as the first Uncharted. Not that it was better.
No, I mean, I think as a game, like entirely, I think that the original Uncharted's like a higher quality overall game, but this is more fun.
Ah, I see. Okay. Yeah, never mind. I agree with that.
Leading us right into our conversation about rankings and so forth. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, as we play these games month to month, we do rank them amongst each other. The full list is on screen now. We have number 17, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Number 16, Prey. Number 15, Batman Arkham Asylum. Number 14, Uncharted 1, Drake's Fortune. Number 13, Halo Combat Evolved. Number 12, Shadow of the Colossus. Number 11, Resident Evil 4. Number 10, Portal. Number 9, Resident Evil. Number 8, Chrono Trigger. Number 7, Dishonored. Number 6, Shovel Knight. Number 5, Portal 2. Number 4, Yakuza 0. Number 3, Hades. Number 2, The Last of Us. And number 1, God of War Ragnarok. Phil, I'm going to jump to you first. Me and Connor had a long conversation about this the other night, but he was hot. He had all his friends over, so he was hot off of we'll say some influencers. And I'm curious to see where you're lying with this one here.
So for me personally, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just say I think we this is the new bottom.
Whoa!
Below DK. Purely just because I would be totally fine like never touching this game again in my life. Whereas I could see myself like on a plane or in a car ride loading up DK Tropical Freeze and like playing a few levels or whatever. But this game I would if it left my life forever, I would not care.
That's insane. All right, Connor, where are you now that we're looking at the list and we've had our conversation? Where are you with this?
Despite all of that, conversations and whatnot, it is in the same spot that I felt it should be in the first 3 hours that I played the game, and that is right below Uncharted, in slightly above. Well, no, substantially above Arkham Asylum. Fuck that game. But I just think it. No, I'm sorry. Above Uncharted 1, just below Halo. I think there's a pretty significant gap in between Halo and Tomb Raider, but I think it's small with Uncharted 1 and Tomb Raider. I just remember Uncharted 1's gameplay being a pain in the ass to get through, despite the charm that the game has with its main cast. Ultimately, when most of your game is going to be going through boring levels as well and just inferior gameplay, I don't see it being above. I don't see it being below Uncharted 1. So the new number 14 would be my suggestion.
And I'm landing in between you two gentlemen. Though I personally think Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is a better game. I don't. I would rather replay this and have more fun with this than I did with Prey. So much so that I would put it above Prey, but below Batman Arkham Asylum at the new number 16. The thing about it is like, yeah, this game is more fun than Uncharted. It's more fun than Batman Arkham Asylum, but it doesn't have the vision that those two games have. And it doesn't, it just, so many of its own elements feel like they're at war with each other, to the point to where it leads to a very disjointed experience and a very not boring, but a very forgettable experience. Whereas I left Batman and I was like, yeah, that was a little boring, but that left more of an impact on me. And Uncharted 1 had the vision, it's just mechanically they weren't quite there yet. And so like I just think this game is inferior to Uncharted 1. And I think it's about on par with Arkham Asylum. It's just that Arkham's overall vision and cohesion between all of its elements brings it up a level for me. Prey frustrated me and annoyed the shit out of me, even though like I do think like the world design and the atmosphere of that game is phenomenal and it still looks great. That was one thing we didn't talk about. Tomb Raider I don't think looks very good. It's very muddy. Quite literally with the mud, but like also like the textures just kind of like blend together and it's just not a very pretty game when looking at it in today's standards, which is unfortunate. So yeah, I land at the new number 16 above Prey, below Arkham Asylum. Does that would put the votes where I have it currently at the new number 16. Does anybody want to make an argument to try and sway for it going above or below anything else?
Yeah, my argument.
Sorry, I just want to be clear. You're saying this is the new number 16?
That's where it lands if nobody changes their votes.
I'm not mad at that.
Connor.
So that's fine with me.
I'm not mad at it. It is objectively better than Arkham Asylum, and I would. Here's the thing.
He says, using his opinion, says objective.
Yes, right. Well, they're the same thing, though. But you see, the problem is that you guys mentioned it yourself. Tomb Raider is more fun. We could say, the Arkham Asylum has better vision, Prey has better vision, but when you actually start playing them, those things go out the window very, very quickly, and you're going to be a lot more, on the level of, I want to stop playing this game, get me off of it.
I did not agree that this was more fun than Arkham Asylum. I said it was more fun than the original Uncharted.
Well, then that defends my position of putting it above Uncharted, because it just is, it's just, at least there's fun to be had. Is it super memorable fun? No, but fun's fun. It's better than just on a technical level being better.
My thing is, Connor, is but like by that description, like you're arguing like a Fast X versus like a Captain America Civil War, where like sure you might be bored by Captain America at points, but in comparison to Fast X, but like Civil War is a way better constructed movie and works on its own more. Whereas like here, with this direct comparison, I can see the duct tape. Every game is kind of duct taped together, but I can see the duct tape with Tomb Raider. Whereas Arkham Asylum, it feels like a seamless experience.
I can see the duct tape wrapped around the stock on the little AK-47 that she had.
Be that as it may, and just a quick side note, Civil War is not only, of course, a better-made film than Fast X, it's also 10 times more fun. Fast X is very forgettable and bland.
I agree. I'm just trying to pull something here.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I still think, like I said, that I think I stand with my original point of, sure, it's duct taped together, but fun is what carries you through games that take hours and hours to beat. And I think when people look at games as, if we're trying to rank games, video games being a source of entertainment, fun should trump over just technical aspects of it better, like world design or level design, which aren't even that great enough to carry the rest of the game forward. In regards to talking about things like Prey and Arkham Asylum.
I mean, but I mean, to kind of counter that, I'm thinking back on my experience with Arkham Asylum, and my biggest issue with that is that it was such a tight experience, such a close knit experience. All the levels were really small, and so you couldn't flood them with a lot of enemies. Like, you had to keep it kind of small, whereas like Tomb Raider has these bigger enemies that flood them in. But if you were to put in arena mode in Tomb Raider, and then take the combat challenges in Batman Arkham Asylum, I think I have more fun with those combat challenges in Arkham Asylum, which, Connor, I know you didn't play them, but they're there. And they're like, that's where like they start like throwing different waves of goons at you, and they start throwing different enemy types at you in combinations that you don't get in the main game. That's more fun to me than just sitting in an arena in Tomb Raider, which is just spray and pray and squeeze and cheese everybody until they fall down. Like, your tactics for every individual enemy in Tomb Raider are exactly the same as every other enemy type, with the exception of the one shield guy that you have to dodge and then put an arrow in his knee.
There's this flow state that you achieve with like Arkham Asylum and the Batman Arkham series, like with the combat. There's no flow state in Tomb Raider.
I agree.
Where like you're just firing arrows, shooting your shotgun, using your pistol, whatever, shooting them in the knee, the shield guy. Whereas you're dodging people, you're countering, you're knocking people out, you're using your cape to stun them in Arkham. You know, there's a certain thing where you see this type of enemy, you know you have to do this. Mm-hmm. And it's just that flow that you get into. I'm going to punch this guy, then I'm going to jump over this guy, where it's so much more satisfying.
But both those are extremely valid points. First of all, to yours, Tavin, while that is true, if that involves kind of a rearranging of what these games are at their face value, because Tomb Raider doesn't have an arena mode, and even though there's an arena mode in Batman, that's a single small mode compared to a whole story, which is where you're going to spend most of your time during your experiences with Batman Arkham Asylum. And I think we're kind of forgetting that the enemy variety in Arkham Asylum sucked ass too. And combat flows a lot smoother. At least with,
it's better than what's here. Like, at least in Asylum, you got stun dudes, you got guys with guns, you got guys with shields, and each of those means something. You have those same things in Tomb Raider, but they mean nothing.
That's true, but then, like, think about how you deal with them. Is it extremely fun to deal with them? I mean, with Tomb Raider, you can get through combat encounters very, very quickly. Batman, you would have slow bits happening between them. You would have to press dodge over and over and over again, which would just extend out the fighting these boring enemies.
The thing that separates it for me is that you have the combination of, hey, this guy you can't just directly punch or just directly do this other thing, but while this other guy... Well, it might be the move you're going to use that's a weakness for this guy that's coming at you this way. It's going to be the exact opposite for the guy coming at you this way. So you have to rethink on the fly to like who you're tackling first and what you're taking care of. In Tomb Raider, you're literally just mowing people down, shooting arrows, switching to your pistol, and you don't even have to do any of that. You can just use one weapon until you run out of ammo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with Phil. At least Arkham Asylum makes you think and like engages you in that way. It forces you to change tactics. It forces you to try something new. And I think all of those things are like the same level of fun, as opposed to Tomb Raider. It's like just shoot everything, and it just becomes mindless mowing down. It may as well be like a horde mode. Like you're playing World War Z at that point, you know?
Once again, I can agree with that. But ultimately, and I kind of see at this point, I'm not going to be able to sway either you from the rankings from where we currently are. But one last bit that I have to fight, because we're talking about Batman, and I'm only going to shit on that game as much as possible and give it as little marks as possible because I hate it. I think that while it does throw different things at you, I do, yes, kill people, kill people, throw them in sarin gas, do something to them. I don't care, kill them. But aside from that, I feel like it's very monotonous, the gameplay of Arkham Asylum, compared to this, where at least you're doing different things. Versus Arkham Asylum, you basically go with those kinds of games, go on autopilot. Okay, this guy's gonna go. I press a button to easily dodge out of this guy's way. Or I press triangle to counter him when the little mark appears above his head. You know, it's a lot more like mechanical gameplay, robotic gameplay, as opposed to this one where really the issue comes in with the enemy AI as opposed to the actual combat systems, which, once again, comparing it to Arkham Asylum, they don't even have good AIs either. We're not really comparing, vastly different quality of games here, but overall, I think just the flow of combat in Arkham Asylum just made me annoyed rather than entertained me, which this game at least was able to do that on some level.
And now we're just faced with the subjectivity of our views because you said the exact opposite thing that me and Phil literally just said.
Yeah,
like you're like.
If anything, me and Tavin are saying that the Tomb Raider combat is strictly mindless waves of enemies that you're just mowing down.
Yeah.
Whereas you have to think in the combat with Arkham Asylum, and that's like Tavin said, it's the exact opposite of what you said.
Phil,
like I said, I've given up on trying to convince you guys.
Yeah. Phil, talk to me on how you put Prey above this game. That's what I want to know.
So, I put Prey above this game for the same reason I put it above DK Tropical Freeze, in that I enjoyed going through, like, I enjoyed the kind of environment that I had, the other environment that I had, the environment that they gave us here. I enjoyed the scares that were there, as although I fucking hate scary games, but I really enjoyed like being able to play in a way that allowed me to bypass those scares and like be like, hey, fuck you, I'm gonna kill you anyway. Oh, you scared me? I'm shooting your fucking head off and disintegrating your whatever mind-powered form that you are. Whereas, I mean, DK is just straightforward platformer. That, I mean, sure, it's good and it's beautiful and the music is great and you can get in that rhythm of like just speeding through a level. But with Prey, I enjoyed the getting this key for this door that I kind of go back and backtrack to this other area that's now full of other enemies that I can kill and loot and upgrade myself. And I just enjoyed the kind of progression that I got with Prey in terms of like kind of making myself stronger and doing all these new, like finding these new creative solutions to puzzles, and not necessarily puzzles, but like
the combat encounters are puzzles inherently.
Yes. Yes. That's what kind of where I'm getting at.
Yeah. All right. I feel that. I was just frustrated I was frustrated by Prey's design, but I understand that perspective. So I guess that kind of locks us all in on where we initially stated, making Tomb Raider the new number 16 above Prey, but below Batman Arkham Asylum. I'm not going to read them all off because it just takes too long now.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that. I think that's good.
Follow us on Twitter to see the new updated results. 2penny Games at 2penny Games, spelt with the number 2. It's in the description. Look at the description. All of our links. Follow us all. Anyway,
that was our longest discussion of a placement, I think, for this game.
I think so. I think that's
all the ones we've done.
We've had some long ones before. I remember fighting I fought real hard for Shovel Knight last episode, and then I remember fighting really hard for Resident Evil. But yeah, it was one of the longer ones. I think it was a more like a more nuanced discussion as well, which was nice. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, as you may know if you've been following this show along, we allow we put a bunch of games into a list and we let a spinner wheel pick whatever we play for the next month. So for the game that we are playing through the month of December and reviewing at the beginning of the next year, we are allowing the wheel to select. Now, when we let the wheel roll, we do veto games out. We each pick one game to cancel out and take out of the wheel. However, that game cannot be taken out for the following month. Those 3 games last month were Axiom Verge, Spider-Man 2018, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So all of those games have to be in the listing this month. And now we have the opportunity, if we so choose, to take something out. Gentlemen, December's a pretty light month. There's nothing really on my radar outside of games that I already want to play. So I don't know if there's anything in here that I actually really, really, really feel a strong way about taking out this month. And just kind of looking through the list as of right now, I don't know if there's anything I really want to take out this month. Oh, you know what? Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of go Jedi Fallen Order. I'm gonna take that out.
I'm pretty sure, obviously not last month, but I think the month before we took that one out.
Oh, did we?
We could have, but it's fine. We can. It's valid. It's a valid pick. But
Yeah.
Connor, are you feeling anywhere here?
Yeah, it wasn't my veto. It wasn't my veto that did that last time.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I have a light month as well for playing new games, but I do want to finish up a lot of other ones that I have on the docket before we do our game of the year in the future. So I'm gonna go with a good old faithful. Tavin knows what it is already. Death Stranding. Take out those long games.
You bastard. Death Stranding is long.
I'm gonna be honest. I as much as I clown on it, I wouldn't have even been mad if we rolled Death Stranding.
Here we go.
I was gonna do Persona 4 because of the same reason, but that's a game I did.
Persona 4 is one of the best games ever made. Also,
I want to play
that either.
Also, 3 is in the list, not 4.
3, yes.
Yeah. So we're going ahead. We're spinning the wheel. We're going to discover what's happening. Remember, you get this at the beginning of every new month. Ring off in the comments what games you want us to add to the list that may have been missing. Super Mario 64.
That's very funny.
We're going down a trip, ladies and gentlemen. Connor, you're going to have to play my copy.
Where do you? Oh yeah, Switch.
It's on Switch, but it was one of those things that they put up for a limited time and then took off. So you have to play my copy of the game.
Yeah.
So
I think it was like December,
or you have to play on my Switch essentially.
It was like December 2019
to like March of 2020, I believe.
Yeah,
something like
strange.
that. Something like that. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you take the time to play Super Mario 64 with us. Let us know how you feel about it in the comments of this episode so that maybe I can pull quotes for next month's episode. Let us know what you would like to see us play on the show. And until next time, have a great time. Gentlemen, say goodbye to the people.
Bye. Bye.